So firstly, before we jump into just the traits, I was going to share that when we talk about 1% edge, that's what it's all about, Carlos. I tell my daughters all the time, I said, if 99% of the people are doing one thing, let's be the 1% and do something different because that's going to be the one that stands out. You've got to stand out in the market today.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's hot topic: how do you sell like no one else? Those three unforgettable traits that win in today's market, which I'm really looking forward to. And to help us out with that, we have David Galvin, an executive in the e-learning and accessibility space for the state, local government, and educational sales. Welcome, David.
Hey, Carlos, thanks for having me.
Did I get the titles and everything right?
Yes, sir. We're good to
All
go.
right.
Sounds great.
All right, David. So this is a big topic. How to win like
Yes.
no one else. How about I'll have you, at least let's start off with defining it, and then we can dive into the traits and kind of have some fun with it.
Sure, sure. So, as everyone knows in today's market, the real differentiation isn't the product; it's how sellers show up, right? It's how do we meet and greet our folks, and how do we really perform in terms of confidence and clarity, and talking with our contacts on a regular basis. So, I think the key thing right away, just to differentiate, is not about product; it's about the seller themselves, and we want to talk about that today.
I agree with you. In fact, I guess I can't have a podcast without saying the word AI.
Yeah,
But even with AI, eventually everybody uses it in some form or fashion.
yeah.
It's kind of killing some of the differentiation out there. So at the end of the day, it's really that interpersonal skill, like you said, how you show up, engage with someone, that I think really is going to make the biggest difference long term and
Yes,
today, obviously. So
yes.
let's start with you said you got three unforgettable traits. What are they?
Yes. So firstly, before we jump into just the traits, I was going to share that when we talk about 1% edge, that's what it's all about, Carlos. I tell my daughters all the time, I said, if 99% of the people are doing one thing, let's be the 1% and do something different because that's going to be the one that stands out. You've got to stand out in the market today. And so these 3 points are going to help you do that. The first one is positive tenacity. There's a difference between aggressiveness and tenacity, and showing up when others don't. For example, if I were to say, your competitor sends an email and keeps sending emails to follow up, and you knock on the door of the actual client, who's going to more likely get the business? The person showing up at the door, because you're
Yeah.
meeting with the client. They want to know who they're dealing with. They want to know that you're real. They want to know that you're there to help solve the problem. So the first one is positive tenacity. Most reps do follow up. And I think in today's world, most reps follow up with emails or with you know calls sometimes, but really mostly by emails and AI, and put them on a cycle and put them on a cadence, right? But we need to change that up and have a variable. And as I shared at the beginning, the difference between aggressiveness and tenacity. Aggressiveness is almost annoying or obtrusive in terms of getting after someone. Tenacity is having a plan that puts your approach in play to actually get to the end in mind, which is the sale and solving the problem for the client. So the first number one is positive tenacity.
I love that one, David. In fact, it is kind of funny. And during COVID, it seemed like we all got into our bunkers, built some really bad habits of just emailing and even
Yeah.
texting some folks in some cases. And as we came out of it, a lot of my workshops we talked about, the phone's not dead.
No.
People still use it, and we try to even get people to use the phone. But you went even one further. Like, hey, in the right segments where you know where your customers are, what
Yeah.
about going out, meeting them face to face, taking them out for coffee? I mean,
100%.
how crazy is that? Because everybody, I think, has gotten so lazy and kind of bunkered in, or even, this is not against being remote, but
No.
sometimes, the customer doesn't care whether you're remote or not. But if he doesn't see it, it's really hard to build a relationship with you.
It is. And, Carlos, the one question I get around point number one is, well, David, our job is mostly remote. It's hard to get from Alabama to New York and knock on a door and say, hey, I'm here. I'm ready to make the deal. So, how can you be more creative? And I'll get into point two in a moment. But to point one, positive tenacity can also come across in a remote way. And that is like we use the virtual tools all the time, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, all those tools, right? How often are you taking the first 10 minutes just to build rapport as if you're literally there? You're saying, hey, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, bring your coffee, sit down, let's have a conversation. Don't worry about getting the product or the solution in front of them right away. Take time to get to know them. If you can't build trust one on one and face to face, built it over the remote connection. So many people have a concern that we are using AI for everything. They want to know they can talk to a real person, have that voice come across, have that positive tone, but sincere approach, and really meet them where they are. So I think that really lends credence to the whole fact of tenacity. Do something different. Be that 1% edge of doing what others aren't.
All right. I love that. I think it was a great point. All right. What was number two?
Yeah, number two. This is probably the word itself is probably overused, but actually the meaning behind it is significant. The word is grit. And we
Okay.
also, you got to have grit. But let's take a look at that, turning setbacks into selling power. So I think the best way to illustrate this is through a story. Um, when I was selling to school districts, particularly district by district, I had an opportunity up in Tippecanoe, Indiana, relatively decent sized school district. You would think, oh, this opportunity was somewhere on the verge of maybe 100,000, 200,000, which in the e-learning space is a pretty good sized deal. But actually, it was close to $500,000 deal year over year. As our salespeople know, annual revenue, recurring revenue is key. But as we went through the sales process, I started to bump up the sales in terms of the actual value and the cost it was going to be. We got down the line with the CIO, and then all of a sudden they went dark for about 2 months. And we all know what that feels like to go dark. Panic mode. What do I do? I keep emailing, I keep calling, I keep doing all these things to try to get the attention of what happened. Why aren't we still talking? Right. And this was pre COVID, but it was still applied today. And that is showing up. Goes back to number one, the tenacity, but grit. The grit around this is I'm feeling down, I'm feeling worried, I'm feeling concerned that we're not going to get this deal. Book a flight, get on the plane, show up at the CIO's office, call the assistant ahead of time, let them know you're coming, but don't tell the CIO, right? Don't let them walk away, but find out their schedule. So I found out his schedule. He's going to be there in the morning. I got there, he's going to start around 9 o'clock. I got there about 8:30. He was in it. He actually got there extra early, so I didn't get to see him right away. So he was in a meeting for about 2.5 hours. I waited in the lobby and finally got a chance to talk with him. And he said, all right, I can't believe you're here. What are you doing here? And I said, well, Mike, I haven't talked to you in 2 months and I'm worried. We were on track. Seemed like we were going to partner and make this thing happen. He said, Dave, come on back here. I said, all right. And so we sat down. He goes, honestly, he goes, we are interested, but he's like, that price blew me out of the water. I can't do $500,000. I don't even know where that's going to come from. I said, all right, well, let's talk about that. And so as we started to dissect it and sit back and listen and ask the questions, don't sell forward, sit back and ask the questions, seek to understand, right? And as I did that, we turned into a 3 hour whiteboarding session of not only what they could do today, but what they could do 5, 6 years down the road with what we were positioning for them. So it got into a vision conversation. So I would share with our team, have a vision, but you got to get after it tactically. But you need to have that vision to align with it. At the end of the day, Carlos, we went from a $500,000 deal to 1.6 million. And you would say, what the heck, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
What
And
what do
so
you
at the end
think
of the
made it
day, yeah,
bigger?
go
I
ahead.
mean, and the more he starts out the conversation, 500,000 is too much for me to spend. I don't even know where I'm going to get the money. How did it turn into $1.6 million?
Yeah, great question. So the biggest point around that is a couple things. One is value. Do you have value that's going to solve a problem, not just now, but for the future? Does it align where it actually brings a bigger solution to the table? For example, if you are selling into the schools and your solution is to help the students right away, what other avenues are you going to help for? Is it the future of where these kids graduate and how they graduate and the retention rate? If you're graduating more students, that means more students are staying. So you're getting more dollars from the federal government. More dollars coming into the school means they can afford more. So our goal was take them from a 70% graduation rate to an 80% graduation rate, and funds would come into the school trickling in much more quickly. The other thing is, are you aligned to their strategic plan? How many of us are actually pulling off the website or calling up to get a copy of the actual strategic plan for the business, the government, the district of the school, and aligning to where they're going 3 to 5 years from now? So how we did that was not say, this is just going to solve for your problem today and tomorrow, which is 500,000. It's going to solve your problem for the next 6 years. And here's how we build it out in the vision that you're trying to accomplish for not only the school, but for the economy in your area, in your state overall. And then at the end of the day, he said, let's do it. I sat down in his office, crafted the contract with our contract team on the phone. We edited it, got it all worked out. By the end of the day, went to the board the next week and we got it signed.
That's a great story. It's I'm with you on the grit. It's in fact, you look at some studies. It's one of the ones I'm thinking of particular. I think it was by Microsoft. It said that 50% of reps give up after one contact.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
80 give up after 4.
Right.
Now, the other side of things is most buyers don't start noticing you till 6. And they're busy. And so having that, tenacity, like you talked about in the first one, but the grit to know, like I didn't succeed today, but I'm going to get up tomorrow and do it again because I'm going to try to find a different way to get there. In fact, there's a book called Grit. That's one of the reasons I have that sign behind my head, because it talked about one of the biggest differences that make people successful. And I think it started at West Point, as I think is a school she talks about, what differentiates kids that make it versus ones that don't.
Yes.
And in fact, the first 6 to 8 weeks is when the majority of those kids drop out. If they're going to drop out, it's early on. And those are those hell weeks early on. Yeah. And he goes, it wasn't the best athletes. It wasn't the best people academically. It was the people that would, fail.
Yeah.
Go to bed that night, wake up the next day and go, I'm going to try again. I'm going to try this a little different. I'm going to try this a little harder. And they knew they could find a way to win. So having grit, you got to believe in yourself and be willing to dust yourself off and keep going at it.
Absolutely. I tell our team all the time, fail forward, right? Fail and keep moving forward. Get back up. It's not, as they say, and it's cliche, but it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up. And I think you made the perfect point around after 1 time, 4 times, or 6, you got to go to that 7th point, or you got to go to the point where you think you've lost contact, do something different. And then that's the 1%, right? The 1% are going to go the distance to make sure it gets done.
Yeah. And that's, so not to confuse people, like, hey, doing the wrong thing every day isn't going to always get there. Because that was your last point. Make sure you try to think about, what can I do differently? How can I address this in a different way? And I also tell folks, sales is a team sport. Yeah. There's other people in the office, your manager, your coworkers. Use them as your team. Hey, here's what I'm trying. I beat my head against the wall. Didn't work out. What are you seeing? The best reps are constantly looking for a way to get around the obstacle to get there.
100%. Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. And in fact, you do have a team of folks. Why not be creative and leverage that? Maybe have one of your teammates make the call and get them on the phone to you. Use a different voice. Use your manager, your leader, to help make that happen. I think a lot of times we get in the habit of, I didn't hear today on Monday, I'll follow up with an email on Thursday. It's not often the case. If they haven't answered your first or second email, it's not because they're maybe too busy. Maybe it's not resonating, or maybe they just haven't had a chance to actually connect the dots. And a phone call or a letter to them physically. How many people get physical letters in the mail anymore, Carlos?
Yeah, and it's funny because mail is dead. But then again, since not a lot of people are using it, it becomes another surprise avenue. I got a letter.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's interesting because, as we look at point 3, if I could go on to point 3, this kind of leads into that. Perfect timing on it. Is the letter idea. And that is, point 3 is process. Out learning and out positioning the competition. How your process is really a differentiator. We talk about the sales process, prospecting to closing. What's your unique process in that plan to actually take people from 0 to 100 in the opportunity with you. So let's take, for example, I was working with the largest school district in Alabama. This is a few years back, and many vendors were calling into them. And I say vendors because they weren't partners with them at all. And we know how this works, right? We all feel like vendors at times when we're trying to get in that partner solution solving mode.
Yep.
But and that's great, and that's right. That's truly right. But the big thing is are you there to solve the problem? And your process is going to make the difference. So vendors were in there, and I knew that was going to be a detriment to my business because I wasn't in there first. I was in there more or less in the middle or in the end. When I got in there, we knew that the process typically was a sales rep goes in, tries to meet with the superintendent, assistant superintendent, has a discovery call, walks through the process, tries to close it, right? Maybe do a demo of software. We flipped that. We said our process is different. We're not here to sell you. We're here to educate you. So what we did, first of all, to the point of the letter, first of all, to get in there, I knew the only way to get ahead of this was to get to the superintendent right away. And they're not going to take a call from a rep to a superintendent because you always have the screener, right? The assistant. But what if you sent a FedEx envelope that you could track and actually record when it was picked, when it was dropped off, and when it was opened? Now you know when you're getting that person's attention. So I did that. I sent a FedEx letter, executive summary, to the superintendent. I got a ping on my phone saying this was delivered. I waited an hour, gave the call, actually got the superintendent on the line, and we set up an appointment. They wouldn't take the call then, but they did recognize the letter and recognize what we were there for, and said, you know what, let's meet. You seem like something's different about what you guys are trying to approach. Again, we didn't go through the typical discovery. We went through a discovery plan that actually brought in the majority of the folks in the district at administrative level to do an educational series. Here's the steps to how you implement what is going on to solve your problem. Not if you go through this demo and if you go through these points, you're going to solve it. It's more or less, if you choose us, awesome. If you don't, I'm giving you a kit for the 12 steps of credit recovery, which was the solution at the time, on how to solve what you're working on. They walked away with it going, they're not selling to us. They're actually educating us. Flip the game. We went to the front of the whole equation of the opportunity and ended up, point taken. We ended up winning it. But it's like you can come in late and still win the business. Be creative and get out there.
Well, something you said, two things that I want to point out. One is, you provided them something of value, right? Like, here are these 12 steps to improve this process. So you gave them something that, they could value, that they could use with you or with someone else, right?
Yep.
And in doing so, it gave you guys more credibility and a chance to really, get to the front of the line, which is great. The other thing you said too is, like, having a process isn't all about checking the box.
No.
I see this all the time too. Like, look, whether you pick the value selling framework that I sell or a million others that are out there, you can't look at it like a checklist, right? In
No.
fact, even the term discovery, if I got one of my checkpoints of folks, if you're having a discovery call and you're the one doing most of the talking, you might as well call that pitching, because that's what
Right.
you're really doing. When you ask them a real sincere question about them having a certain challenge or problem in their business, and they said yes, did you respond with empathy? I go, man, it's terrible. What are the
Right.
indications of that? How often does that happen? Or did you respond with, great, that's awesome, let me tell you how I can fix it?
Yes.
Because right off the bat, you could tell, okay, you're in it for yourself. You're just trying to pitch your product. Discovery to you is, can I, does this client fit the square peg that I sell, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I tell our reps all the time, that first call with them, that discovery call, 90% of it should be about them talking and sharing with you. You're there to actually uncover like a doctor. You're trying to get to the root cause of what's happening in the business. And that can't be after 2 questions you find that out. It can't be after
Right.
just 5 minutes of them sharing with you and then you pitching like you said, then you get into a pitch and you hope that what you're pitching aligns with what they're experiencing or if they even have the problem. So to your point, Carlos, absolutely, it's imperative to do that. And I think the big thing with process, like you said, it's not checking the boxes, but it's having a repeatable plan that works. And when you have that repeatable plan, you become the champion of that conversation. You come across confident, calm, clear, and who else would want to buy from someone than someone who comes across confident, calm, and clear, and can sit back and listen to an executive or a buyer and everything that they want to get off their chest in terms of what the needs are and what the challenges are that they're experiencing.
Yeah. Another like trap, I think, when people think process, they go, oh, it's going to be onerous, or it's no.
Yeah,
Look, anything you want to do consistently. You think about a golf swing. If you look at the best golfers, they usually go
right.
through a number of steps before they swing the club. Why? Well, they're trying to position themselves, hold the club the right way, make sure they're aligned. They don't just get up and go, "Whoop, swing, here we go." Well, maybe I do because I suck at golf, but you get the idea. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, in sales, I think you get that. You get people like, Carlos, I'm good. I'm great at this. I've been doing this 10, 20 years. I, think about it. If Tiger Woods says, I've been doing this my whole life since I've been 2, I'm
right.
just going to get up there and swing the club. That isn't what happens. The best
No,
folks have a process, a system that allows them to be consistent in what they do. They don't just wing it because they think they got experience. In fact, as soon as I think you start doing that, you start showing that you don't care as much.
yes,
You miss steps. And then, sadly, I think over the last 10, 20 years, we've had some great hot markets.
yes,
And poor sellers had success. This day and age, because we started out like in today's market, it's brutal out there,
it's
especially in
brutal.
some segments. And if you're not going back to having the basics and some process to get there and finding a way to differentiate yourself, you're not going to make it.
Absolutely, absolutely. The process, like you're saying, isn't checking the box. It is about the overall arching plan. And one of the best sales reps I've ever seen out there, he has a process, and that is around storytelling. He's told the similar story 1,000 times to different clients, but it resonates every time. And the reason is it comes across so confident and so clear that he's not having to wing it. He's not having to figure out what the next point is he's trying to address. He's been there. He's been there in his mind 1,000 times, and he's prepping for it. The other thing around that process is preparation, right? If we're not prepared to go into a meeting, in today's world, we're remote. We got Zoom or Teams meeting after Teams meeting, Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. How many of us are taking 15, 20 minutes or so before the meeting to carve out a block? Use that to get your mindset around the next client and to have your questions ready, but also your stories that you're going to share to relate to what they're going through. We need that block time. We're spending too much of our day going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting to get the volume instead of the quality.
1,000%. In fact, along those same lines, I recommend folks like leave these 15-minute gaps in between calls,
Yeah,
block it out. Um, when I record like for this podcast, it not only blocks the hour for our session, it blocks 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after,
right.
so that I know I'm not back to back and I'm just jumping on to the next topic. And it's the same thing I think in sales. And I had a great call this morning with someone, and luckily I had block time afterwards because it went on and on for a while. And it's hard to get this someone that I had on the phone, by the way. So I felt fortunate that I didn't feel rushed. I didn't feel like I had to go jump on the next call right away. In fact, after the call, I was able to even capture some notes in my CRM,
Yeah,
plan out my next meeting with this individual, and really be much more effective and efficient in what I do. So it's, sometimes less is more. And that's kind of where that comes into. I'd rather have 5 great calls in a business day
right.
than 8,
Exactly.
where at the end of the day, I don't even know who the heck I talked to.
Right. Right. Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. Uh, the whole fact around being present, right? It's like being present in the moment with your clients. And the best way to do that is be prepared.
Right. I agree. All right. So let me recap these. Uh, Persistent tenacity. You
Yes.
remember that, right?
Yep. Positive,
Grit,
persistent tenacity.
All right. And then grit, you talked about in the middle, right? So you got to keep going after it. And then having a process from being prepared to having a process or success stories or stories that you share so that you're much better prepared. In fact, that kind of leads to the part you also talked about is when you are better prepared, you're also able to be a better listener. And
Yes.
that's half of the communication battle.
Yes, it is. And what do we say? We have. I took a Dale Carnegie course once and was part of Dale Carnegie, and they said you have two ears and one mouth. Listen to twice as much as you talk.
Yeah, I had a business partner, God bless his soul, Salva, said that he used to say the same thing, and I never ever forgot it.
Yeah,
All right, so clarification question for you. Hey,
sure.
I know you deal a lot with federal and SLED, but the same concepts apply to commercial, small and medium business, or enterprise and strategic, don't they?
They absolutely do. I mean, when I first started out, I was selling to commercial, and actually a couple of these similar type scenarios came up, and I used very similar tactics and strategy. It works absolutely across any market, and in fact, that's one of the most advantageous things about the three steps or the three traits, I should say, is that it does work in any market across what you're trying to accomplish.
I love it. All right, David, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. So you maybe so as I referenced the largest school district in the state of Alabama. One of the reasons I was able to get to do business with them is I was local. Now you say, David, you don't sound like you're from Alabama. And I know that may be cliche-ish or stereotypical, but I'm not. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And I wanted to share with you that I actually met my wife in Boston. We moved back down to Birmingham, where she's from, and I bring all this to light because we have three daughters. And as I learn and continue to try to get that 1% edge, I realize the impact it has not on my business, but more so on my family. It's that, hey, ask the questions. And I tell my daughters all the time, ask the questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question. There's no dumb answer, right? Or no
Yep.
dumb question, I mean, pardon me. But I share where I'm from because I want to help clarify that even though I'm in a different environment for the last 22 years from where I grew up, you can be in a different environment in your job. You can be in a different environment or feel out of place in sales and make it your home. This has been the best place I've ever lived. I love Alabama. I love Birmingham. I love the people. And, overall, I've been here 22 years. Got to travel the nation, doing business all over the place, and people are all the same. You go to New York or Alabama, you go to California, we're all the same. We want to meet people, we want to do business with people, and we want people to care. If you're caring, and like you said, Carlos, if you have empathy, that's going to take you a long way. And the way to get empathy is to pick yourself up from the struggles that you've had, and not just dust yourself off and get going, but actually take a chance to learn from it and really apply it going forward, because we've all failed at things. We have to learn to pick ourselves up and fail forward.
I love it. Being a kid from New York that's lived coast to coast. Hey, I'm right next door. I've been
Yeah,
22 plus years here in Georgia, and I love where I live and I love the environment. But I also get to travel all over the place. That's one
yeah,
of the things I always tell folks that when you travel, not just domestically, internationally, and you meet people and you really get to know them, it's really a small world. In
it
fact,
is.
I was talking to a taxi cab driver in Kuala Lumpur, and he's complaining how his kids are always on their cell phones and they're not paying attention. And I go, we could put you in any city in America and you'll fit right in.
That's all right. It's so true. And we're all the same. I mean, and that's the best thing. I love people and I love being in sales. And no matter, like I said, no matter where I go, the people are great. It's how you meet them where they are in their world, and be open to having that empathy and listening with two ears and talking less with one mouth.
I love it. All right, David, what's your 1% edge? What are you working on these days to get even better?
Yeah. So the big thing I'm working on is actually just what we talked about, listening as much as I can, but also the thing is I'm more and more remote, and I miss getting face to face with a lot of folks. So I spend more time in my calls getting to know people over the Zoom or Teams rather than spending so much time just getting into the sale itself. And I try to make sure that at the end of the day, my clients aren't just clients, but I really feel and treat them as if they're my family or friends. Because in the end, if I have a customer for 6 months and not for a long term as a friend, then I've missed out.
It's a great point. In fact, I do try to take like the first 5 minutes just to get to know someone.
Yeah,
Again, you got to be authentic about doing it, which I
of
know
course.
you are as well. Because I've seen some pretty bad ones out there. I go, look, either you really care about knowing each person or you don't, right? If you're
Right,
busy and your mind's somewhere else, like you could even see it in Zoom. They ask you a question, and they're like, and then they look away. You're
right,
like, dude, what are you doing? I mean, they
right.
can see you, right? You got to be present. So I'm with you. I think it's a great thing to work on. And I'm laughing a little bit because one of the clients I met over the years, he's actually coming to visit me in December. Now, I met this guy 5, 6 years ago, and I consider him a friend today. I've gone fishing with him out west. He's gone fishing with me here in Georgia. I mean, you might be surprised. You may not just pick up a great client, you might even pick up a friend for life.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I mean, I think back and I'll close out on this, Carlos, is one of my good friends has been a friend. He was my first customer ever in sales 20 something years ago, and president of a college, and I still can reach him on a cell phone today. And that just speaks to his character and how willing he was to befriend me and be able to stick together over the years. So it's a lot of fun. Our business is a lot of fun.
Agreed. Well, David, so if people want to reach out and get to know you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is the best way. I'm out there, David Galvin, out of Birmingham, Alabama, and I would be more than happy to answer questions or connect with you or help share ideas on giving you that 1% edge to be different.
David, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Carlos. I'd love to do it again sometime.
You got it. All right, everyone. That does it for this week's episode. If you found value in it, please comment back, subscribe, give us 5 stars if you could. We'd greatly appreciate your support. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thanks again, David.
Thank you.